Welcome to the miscellaneous portion of the 2018 Library Chess Productions Movie Awards, where we give, again, some familiar awards if you've been watching our show in the past. We're going to give out the awards for we expected more and we expected less from these movies. Each one of us have 3 movies in this category. We're also going to give single movie awards for the movie we can't believe we loved, the movie we can't believe we hated, and then we have some surprise awards, surprises to each of us and surprises to you. And up until we do the video for the top 5 worst movies of 2018, this will probably be the longest video up until that point in the awards. So buckle up, get your popcorn, and let's give out some awards. Kicking things off this year is going to be the award for the 3 movies for each of us that we expected more from. And I'm going to send out the opening volley here with the first movie that I expected more from this year, The Predator. And this seems like probably a weird choice for some people, like why would you expect more from that movie? But I expected more from The Predator for a very specific reason. It was very obvious from the beginning that this was going to be a sequel machine. Like, they were essentially rebooting this whole franchise with this one movie. And I expected more from it, and this is going to sound so redundant and stupid. I expected more from it because I didn't enjoy it as much as I should have for, like, a reboot. If this is going to be a sequel machine, the idea is probably the second one's probably not going to be quite as good as the first one, because how many sequels are better than the originals? You have Wrath of Khan, and you could probably make the argument for Rocky 2, and that might be it. Those might be the only ones. So you expect that you're going to like the first one probably a little bit better than a sequel. So if I only enjoyed this first Predator, like, look, there's things about the Predator movie to enjoy. Like the way that it's filmed, it looks very 90s. That was very clearly the vision, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the design of this new, like, Alpha Predator. Like, it was a badass design. It was great, and that I enjoyed. But the rest of the movie just felt very, very weak to me. Or, like, not that a Predator movie has to have a great script, but I was like, this script is not very good.
I hoped it would be better because I like the Predator as a character, but I expected more because of Shane Black.
Right.
And but I mean, it's not on my list, but it's a good pick because, like, I did expect more from that too, mostly because of Shane Black. But Predator doesn't really have a good track record. No, the character's really cool, but the movies don't have a great track record.
No, it's true. It's almost like they can't find a footing within their own series. It's strange. Yeah. Just before we move on, does that make that movie an absolute? This is a question. Questions with Tyler. Q&A with Tyler. Does that make this movie a failure as a sequel machine?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't even think it made that much money.
I don't think so. And I like there is reason to be, I guess, to be excited for the second one, but it feels like that was just like if they put all their eggs in this basket for the future of the Predator franchise, not great.
No, not great. I don't know that it gets a sequel. At least, like, it might get, like, another, like, reboot or something down the line, but I can't see it getting a sequel.
Straight to DVD.
Yeah. So my number 3 is not even a movie that I disliked. I actually enjoyed it, but I did expect more from it. It's Thoroughbreds. Because, like, I'm gonna keep this really simple. It's a fine movie, good performances. It's entertaining. But the critics were wanking over it so much that I expected, like, the best movie of the year. And the critics are still wanking over it. And that's isn't a hatred towards critics. It's just, like, normally when critics are going crazy, it just kind of, raises my expectations. Yeah. And Thoroughbreds was really, like, I was really excited to see it. And it was good, but it disappointed me a little because I expected more because of the critics. Right. And that's really the only reason I have.
I had it to watch, and it just didn't quite make the cut down the stretch. There were other movies that I was just like, I got to prioritize watching this movie before whatever. we've crossed that bridge with critics before, where it's just like, oh, the critics are loving it, and da-da-da-da, and then you watch the movie, and it's just like, your expectations are of, like, a baseline of quality, and it's a lot of the time it doesn't hit it, and you're just like, what? And again, like he said, not a criticism of critics.
No. I actually trust, I mean, I don't trust critics, but, like, I'm not harsh towards critics at all.
No.
Because generally I approach movies in a similar fashion to them, so when a critic really likes something, I tend to get pretty excited for it.
Right.
So I'm not hating on critics. I'm not one of them.
So my second movie that I'm going to peg as a movie that I expected more from is the sequel to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Fantastic Beasts 2, The Crimes of Grindelwald. And I put that on this list because, like, I'm what I call a late bloomer Harry Potter fan, right? I haven't read the books, don't kill me. Haven't read the books and only entered the film series, I think, at Goblet of Fire, maybe. And I really enjoyed the first Fantastic Beasts. The reason that I enjoyed, or one of the main reasons I think that I enjoyed the first one so much, is it felt very accessible to me. I didn't have to be somebody that's read all the books, that's read all the extended books, that's read the fan fiction and is into the whole lore of the Potterverse and da-da-da-da-da. I didn't have to be that person to enjoy the first Fantastic Beasts movie. It was very accessible to me. Fantastic Beasts 2 is not. Fantastic Beasts 2, it delves too deeply entirely into deep cuts fan service and really hard to follow, like, family trees and relationships and stuff. You have to be deep cuts in the Potterverse to follow that movie. And I don't think it's not malicious, obviously, it's a movie. But it's just like, this is not accessible to me at all. And, like, I'm like, okay, cool, I'll stuff up on the big screen and the visual effects and whatever are fine. But in terms of, like, including anybody that's within this fandom, I don't think that movie did it, and I expected way more from it based off of the first movie. So Fantastic Beasts 2 is the second one that I pegged that I expected more from.
More like Crimes of Cinema.
There you go.
Right? Huh? I've never seen it.
No. Fair enough.
My number 2 is Sicario, Day of the Soldado. Soldado, yeah. This is another movie that I actually enjoyed. But, and it's had kind of a weird path to get here, because at first I was like, why are you making a sequel? Sicario does not need a sequel, especially if it's not Denis Villeneuve directing it, because the first one I adore so much.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I'll probably watch just because. But then when they announced the director, I can't remember his name, but he's done, like, prior crime stuff.
Yes.
So he's familiar with the genre, so I thought that maybe he'll do a good job. And then I saw the trailer, and I was like, whoa, this looks really cool. So then I was pretty excited for it, and what I got was a completely lesser film. Still a good movie.
Yeah.
But again, like, I expected more because I love Sicario, and the director was giving me a little bit of, faith in it. And I mean, it has a great beginning. The beginning of the movie was really fantastic, so I thought that maybe it wouldn't pass the first one, but I thought that it would be really good. It wasn't really good. It was a good movie, so that's my number 2 pick.
Yeah. That was a movie, actually, that was on my list for quite a long time, that it was going to be on here as well. I feel like that's a movie that misses 3 core elements, and you mentioned one of them, which is Denis Villeneuve not directing it. And again, that's no criticism against the director, but it's like, there's Denis Villeneuve, and then there's the guy that directed that.
But before that, but he, instead of doing it his own way, he tries to hit that Villeneuve.
Yeah.
Which was somewhat successful, but just, it needed its own flavor.
Right.
That was his, because he was just trying to do Villeneuve. And I understand why, but yeah, that's...
Second core element, obviously, is no Emily Blunt. Sorry, like, I mean, she's a fucking master craftswoman of her art. I mean, you don't have her in the movie.
She's my favorite actress.
There you go. And the third one was, I don't think that movie effectively made Mexico its own character. And that's one of my favorite parts of the first one, is like, you enter Mexico and the entire tone of the movie changes. It's its own character. And that movie doesn't even, I don't think, attempt to do that. It's like, man, that's one of the core thematic elements of that first movie that makes it so good.
Yeah, it felt more like just a normal action movie that wanted to make some money.
Right, exactly.
As compared to maybe a more artistic attempt.
And the third and final film that I'm pegging as one that I expected more from, and this is the one that hurts my soul the most, right here, it's Super Troopers 2. And that's my own fault. Because I knew, like, I love that first movie. Like, that first movie, like, got me through university. It's like, I'd be like, oh God, I was stressed over whatever, and I would just throw that on in the background and do whatever, and it's like, I'm way happier. The second movie I knew wasn't going to be the first movie, and I knew that in my heart of hearts, it's not going to be the first movie. But I still foolishly hoped against hope that maybe it would be the first movie. And I didn't dislike the second one. I note that Jay Chandrasekhar has not changed his directorial style in 17 years. I just, that it's fine, but it's done the exact same way. And it's like, it was fine. It was fine, but that's the problem. My foolish brain and foolish expectations were, and then when you go from to fine, that lands you on this list.
Yeah.
And again, it's my own fault, and I didn't dislike the movie, but it is what it is.
It felt like they were either trying too hard or not enough.
Right.
I wrote that in my review on Criticker, and I guess that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but in my mind it does, because I couldn't really figure out which was true. Because, like, the jokes were some kind of lazy, but then they were also throwing way too many jokes. I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah.
Some of them had. It was still fun. Like you said, it was a fine movie, but I don't know. I don't love the first one as much as you do, but I certainly really enjoyed the first one.
Yeah, right.
So, I considered it for my 3, but
yeah.
I don't have the same passion for the first one as you do, so it didn't make the cut. All right, and my final pick is Fahrenheit 451. Again, not a terrible movie, although very average. Like, we're getting to a point with this one where I almost disliked it, but I still basically enjoyed it. It had so much going for it. I mean, the source material is one of my favorite books of all time. Certainly the best dystopian novel of all time. Come at me, I guess. Because it was just so average. With the talent involved, it had, like, Michael Shannon and Michael B. Jordan. Like,
yeah.
2 fantastic actors. Great source material. And yet it felt somewhat lifeless. And I normally don't care about differences between book and movies, but Michael B. Jordan's character should have been married, and the Hound should have been in this, because the Hound was like the coolest part of the book, and the Hound was nowhere to be found unless I missed it in the background or something. But I don't think that would be in the background, because the Hound was pretty important in the novel. So yeah, just because my expectations, because I love the book so much that when I saw that there was a movie being made, I was so excited. I gobbled that up like the day it came out.
You know what that sounds very much like when you talk about that movie versus how a certain group of people talked about another movie? A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah.
Because A Wrinkle in Time changed so much from the book. And a lot of the time that doesn't bother me, because I'm like, whatever, it's somebody's interpretation, that's fine. But, like, Wrinkle in Time changed a ton, including changing the gender of, like, several characters and completely changing their motivations in the process. So it's like, all right, fair enough. But, like you said, to have those certain, like, key elements, right? And just be like, we don't need this, or we can do this a different way, or...
I'm really upset about the Hound, mostly.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move on to the opposite of that award. We're going to move on to the 3 movies this year that we expected less from. We went in expecting a certain thing, and wound up here.
So my number 3 is Den of Thieves, a movie that came out very early in 2018, and I didn't expect much from. I expected a very, very average crime movie, but it was significantly better than I thought. Now, mind you, it's not one of my favorite movies of the year, but it's one of those movies where people are like, you've seen Den of Thieves? I'm like, yeah, you should actually watch it. Because even though it's a little bit long, it was a pretty compelling attempt at the genre. And one that I weirdly think about occasionally, and it actually I'm more fond of it as time goes on. But yeah, like, Den of Thieves is a completely solid crime drama. If you haven't seen it, you should go see it, because it's definitely worth your time, even if it's not one of the best movies of the year.
Sometimes you get those movies, those under-the-radar January movies or February movies that is just like, I'm not going to remember this in 2 weeks, and by the end of the year you're like, that was actually good. So the first movie that I'm pegging as a movie that I expected less from is Crazy Rich Asians, and there is absolutely no deeper meaning to this. I went into a movie expecting not to invest in the characters, not to invest in the story, not to invest in the movie. Just be like, all right, it was fine, and I invested. I invested in the story. I invested in the characters. I was wholly invested in that movie. And that's literally the only reason that it makes this list. I went in expecting not to invest, and by the end of it, I absolutely had.
They're a bunch of bougie dickheads.
They are.
But in fact, I actually enjoyed it too. I don't know if I expected less or not, because when I heard about it, they were already sort of saying, like, the hype had already started. So
right.
I don't know that I expected less, but I didn't want to see it at first, and then when it came out and everyone was like, this is really good, then I did end up seeing it. Alright, now we're about to get serious.
Okay.
Because my next pick is Solo, a Star Wars story.
Ooh!
I had no interest at all in this movie.
I'm so happy.
I almost didn't see it.
Wow.
But then it came out, and I'm just sitting there, well, I might as well watch it. I might as well be part of the conversation and stuff. I don't think it's a great movie.
Right.
It's not even as good as Rogue One, which I actually really love. But I'm gonna say it. I think it's better than the latest episodes. It's better than The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, which are also movies I don't hate. But I think that Solo is better. You say you can watch these or Solo. I'm picking Solo. It was just an entertaining romp. That's all it was. And I guess that's all I needed, because The Last Jedi wasn't really a very entertaining romp. Like, I didn't care about Han Solo that much. Like, he's a good character, but it doesn't, I'm not, like, really emotionally invested in him. But when I watched this, I came out of it being like, it was fun.
Yeah.
I certainly expected a lot less from this, especially considering it bombed, like, legitimately bombed.
Right.
And people were not saying great things about it, but I came out and I said, it's probably my second favorite Star Wars movie in recent years. Not of all time, just in recent years. Like, with the 2 episodes and Rogue One, it's behind Rogue One. And now everyone's like, he had shitty Star Wars taste. And maybe I do. Maybe I do.
Second movie I'm pegging for this list as a movie that I expected less from is Love, Simon. And the reason that it winds up on this list is I went into the movie expecting just another entry in what is a sea of coming-of-age movies that are to varying degrees of okay. Like, you see, there are some that are really, really good, but I would say the vast majority are some degree of, this is alright. And that's what I expected Love, Simon to be. But what I got was, like, I got a movie that was, yes, it was those things, but it stood out to me because it was so thoroughly believable. I'm like, this strikes me as, like, the perfect one of these movies for 2018. Right? It's such a thoroughly believable story. It's performed so well, and even when it really goes for it at the end, because it goes for the sap and goes for the ham at the end, even when it gets hyperbolic, it's like it didn't break my immersion in the movie at all. It didn't break my suspension of disbelief at all. Like, this still feels very believable and authentic to me. So if you have a coming of age movie within that genre that can do that, it stands out as being a little extra special in that, and that's why it winds up on this list.
Yeah, it was good. It was a charming movie with some heart.
Yes.
Not a perfect movie by any means.
No.
I actually expected less from that too, so that's a good pick. Okay, so my final pick is this movie called Set It Up. It was a Netflix rom-com, which I actually reviewed on the Library Chess Productions channel.
Yes.
Surprisingly good. A decent premise or whatever. And the reason I expected less is because I never expect much from a rom-com. Like, there are good, really good rom-coms, certainly, and I'm not a guy that's insecure enough to be like, I don't like rom-coms, because I do like rom-coms. It's just the formula has to really hit for me to really like it, and Set It Up is probably one of the better rom-coms I've seen in recent years. Not that I'm some expert on the genre by any means, but it did neat things with it. So just the fact that it was a rom-com, I expected less. And it wasn't even like a theater rom-com. I mean, Netflix puts up good movies, but we're not quite at that level yet where Netflix has the prestige in terms of the movies that they release. That, people still think theater films, even though that's not completely true all the time by any means.
It's true.
So Set Up, that's why I expected less, because it's a rom-com. A Netflix rom-com that didn't get any real recognition that I know of.
Right.
So I just expected a lot less from it, and it was actually, like, I would even argue like a pretty great rom-com.
And the third and final film that I'm pegging as a movie that I expected less from is Blockers.
Yes.
Yeah,
indeed.
so I'm going to throw this out here because when I saw the trailers, first of all, I wasn't even particularly interested in the movie. I had tepid interest because of the John Cena of it all. And I'm like, I'm interested in seeing his burgeoning film career. So
Which
I was like,
been
okay.
pretty solid,
Which has been pretty
honestly.
solid so far. So I was interested on that level, but I just expected it to be like an average to mediocre comedy because that's kind of what it looked like it was going to be within the construct of a relatively interesting premise, which is taking the American Pie trope and gender bending it. Right? You don't see that all the time. And I was like, this premise is interesting to me. And of the, the parents are like, we must stop this, rather than the parents are nowhere to be found unless you're Eugene Levy. So it's like, okay, this premise seems interesting to me. And at the end of that movie, I'm like, that was heartfelt. That was funny. I laughed throughout that entire movie, which not a lot of comedies can do. And like and again, this is weird to say, a representative kind of comedy. Because not only are you representing women in a particular trope, but then you're also representing sexuality different ways. And it's just like, this is like one of the perfect comedies for 2018 because it scratches that representative itch in film and culture and media and everything like that, and it's still really funny and really thoughtful and heartfelt. So that's why that struck me as like, this is, and I'm not saying this is one of my favorite movies this year, but it's like, wow, for what I expected the movie to be, it wound up being way more than that. So that's why it gets right at the top of this list.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a pure comedy, and in the sense of being a pure comedy, I think it's one of my favorite pure comedies of the year. There are movies I've laughed more at, but they fuse maybe action or something else in, and this was just a pure comedy, and I really enjoyed it. So that's a good pick.
All right, but enough of the positivity. You didn't come here for positivity. You came here to hear us trash something.
Yeah.
So let's move on to that. I can't believe I hated this movie.
Yeah.
My choice in 2018 as a movie that I can't believe I hated is The Darkest Minds. And I hated The Darkest Minds because in 2018, this is what still passes as releasable young adult movies. The fact that this, derivative of every other YA movie that has come out. If you've seen The Hunger Games, if you've seen Maze Runner, you've seen this movie. If you've seen any YA movie over the last 10 to 12 years, you've seen this movie. And the fact that you could still release this with this script that sounded like it was written on the back of a Kellogg's box, that you can still release this movie. Fact check. And this is still considered releasable YA. I thought we were far enough separated from the YA boom that you might get one that's like, okay, let's try to do something a little different here. And I feel bad for Amanda Steinberg, I believe is her name, because she's better than this movie, but she ain't better than this movie in this movie. So that's why The Darkest Minds winds up as a movie that I didn't exactly think I was going to love, but I can't believe I wound up vitriolically hating this movie.
I haven't seen it because I had no interest.
That's good. It bugs me that movie was made by the same people that made both Stranger Things and Arrival. I'm like, those are two really good things. How could you not, between all of you, how could you not figure out how to make this at least okay?
But it must have been produced. Only produced. Right?
Yeah, I guess
you didn't have the same amount of talent working on this one as you did Arrival and Stranger Things.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but it's just like somebody along the line had to figure this out.
Yeah. All right, so my pick is a movie called The House That Jack Built. Anyone who knows foreign movies probably knows, especially experimental and challenging ones, knows the director Lars von Trier.
Oh, yes.
I've only seen 8 of his movies, but I've never actually hated any of them. But I've never hated any of his movies until now. And I was actually excited for this one. Basically, it's about a serial killer, which is fine. And I appreciate how he's a very challenging director. And this is one of those love or hate kind of things. Mm-hmm. But I found it so tripe and so boring. It's 2.5 hours of watching this guy just kill people and then be philosophical about his life, but it comes across like a university student being like, "Ooh, I'm taking philosophy. I know so much about this," and he's trying to put stuff in an interesting perspective. But I was so bored. You know, like I like him as a director. Some of his movies that he's made have also been really challenging that I've really, really liked. This one just didn't click with me at all, to the point that I actually hated it. So
I've written this book of poetry on what I like to call the human condition.
Oh shit, that's deep.
Yeah. That's what this guy's like with his murders. But enough of being negative. That's not why you come here for the awards. You come here to hear us be positive. And that's the way we're introing the award. It's the opposite of that. It's the movie that we each can't believe we loved. And Tyler's gonna kick us off.
Mine is Won't You Be My Neighbor? And I didn't expect to hate this movie by any means, but I wasn't a Mr. Rogers guy growing up. I was like a Fred Penner guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked Mr. Rogers, but I never watched him all the time. So I didn't have that same level of emotional commitment to him as a person. So, I mean, certainly one of the best documentaries of the year. I don't know what my list is, but certainly one of the best documentaries, one of the better movies of the year. Just a beautiful, heartwarming flick that just makes you miss him so much. Even as someone who's not like a gigantic fan of his, I miss Mr. Rogers. It doesn't have any forced drama or really any twists that make you think, oh, Mr. Rogers wasn't a good person. Like, no, he was.
Yeah.
That's all this is. A celebration of him. Yeah. And it talked about some of the challenges that he faced in his career and whatnot, but it didn't go down some dark road. It's just really nice to have this movie at this time when things are so negative and so bad. It's really nice to have this movie. So, like, I expected to like it, but I couldn't believe that I absolutely loved it.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it's funny because you talk about that and it never made me think, it's like, wow, we go back to like the kids show wars of that time. It's like, are you Team Penner or are you Team Rogers?
I mean, obviously Rogers wins.
Right.
But I just happen to enjoy Fred Penner.
Right, fair enough. And my choice in 2018 for the movie that I can't believe I loved was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Because the reason I can't believe I loved it is even when I looked at the trailer and like how good that first trailer was, with like the graveyard scene and the train and everything, I was like, Sony will not make this movie good. And that was it. That was my derogatory mindset towards Sony. It was like, look, sure, anybody can pump out a really good-looking trailer. We've seen it. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets had a good-looking trailer. But that doesn't mean the movie's going to be good. In fact, in that case, it was dog poop garbage. But I was just like, Sony's not going to make this movie good. It's just not going to happen. Wrong. I was wrong about that. I was very wrong about that. That movie is technical brilliance on an across-the-board level. Animation, production design, soundtrack is incredible, the screenplay is good, the voice acting is good, everything about that movie is technical, like just maybe not mastery, but it's just like technical execution on a level that I was like, I can't give Sony this much credit. I was going to skip it entirely. I was just like, whatever, it's not part of the MCU. It's fine, I can miss this effectively. Wrong. I was wrong about that again. Miles Morales is a great Spider-Man. And yeah, I was 100% wrong about the movie, and I cannot believe how much it blew me away.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. It's hard to imagine a world where, like, nobody was wanking off over it. Because now that it's out and people have seen it, everybody loves it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
My only fear about the movie is that they're going to rush out a sequel and it's going to torpedo the whole thing. And it looks like they're going to rush out a sequel, and I hope it doesn't torpedo the whole thing.
Yeah, hopefully it's good.
Fingers crossed. So we're going to close out the video with a pair of awards each, and in at least one case, there's an award that I'm going to give that this guy doesn't even know what the award is, much less what I'm going to choose for it. So this is a pair of awards that we each do, and then we each have one award that we're giving out by ourselves.
Yeah, mine's not a surprise because I gave it out last year where it was a surprise. I asked them if we could just bring it back.
Yeah, so. And it's basically, it's in there with all the other ones now that we are just going to do on an annual basis because we can't not. And you'll know exactly what it is when he has the opportunity to say it. And he'll get the opportunity to say it right now, because that's what we're going to kick off with.
Okay, so you need to know that I have a bunny named Castle. That's the only information that you need to know about this award. I won't go on about it.
And if you didn't know that, where have you been?
Where have you been?
Yeah, exactly.
I
where
tell
have you
everyone.
been? He's literally in thumbnails on this channel.
Yeah, exactly. He's so cute. So I only gave the shortened version of this award, like the name, last year. I'm gonna have to read off the full version of this award.
Due diligence.
So here it is. The 2018 Castle Award for Best Performance by a Bun Bun or Bun Buns in a Motion Picture, either lead or supporting in 2018, because bunnies are adorable and amazing and we should all pay more attention to them, but also did I mention that they are cute. That's a full name for the award, in case. It might change next year.
That will be on the test.
That will be on the test. So basically, I watch movies, I notice bunnies, I give an award to the best performance or performances if there's multiple, because we can cheat.
Right.
I'm kind of reading off a little bit. I want to say ones that didn't make it, because I want to just extend this and talk about bunnies as long as I can.
Fair enough.
There was a rabbit named Chainsaw and Leave No Trace, but he didn't really do a whole lot, so I couldn't pick him.
Okay.
There was a rabbit hanging out in a garden in the movie We the Animals, but he's only there for a few seconds.
Okay.
But he's like a little shit disturber, like rabbits are, because he's hanging out in a garden eating the food, so I considered him. And of course, my boy Petey Rab from Peter Rabbit, who's the main character and honestly was the front runner, but it felt like a really boring pick. He was going to win, but then something else came up. I want to give special attention, even though I've never watched the show, but there's like a TV remake of Watership Down, which is all milk bunnies, but that's television. But I still want to give a shout out to the animated bunny performances in Watership Down, even though that show will be cripplingly depressing.
Right.
I'm going to watch it eventually. But my pick, the 17 rabbits in the movie The Favorite. I didn't know that there was 17 rabbits. I just read this somewhere, so maybe I'm wrong. But basically, the 17 rabbits, they represent the queen, the character of the queen's dead children in this movie.
Oh.
She has, apparently, I never counted, but apparently she has 17 rabbits. Now, that in itself is reason enough because they're so important to the movie. And I also take that into consideration, like the importance of the rabbit to the film, not just performance. Also, there were just scenes of them just kind of hopping around, and that did it for me. It's a serious movie, but then every time I would see a Bun Bun just hopping around in the room, I'd be The rabbits are, like, just very important. Like, I'm not going to ruin the ending, but in the ending, it has possibly the most powerful scene in any movie this year, and it involves a rabbit, and it's very hard to watch.
Okay.
And the movie literally ends. I guess I'm kind of ruining. It's just a shot. I'm not ruining the plot, but the movie literally ends with like rabbits. so I feel like The Favorite. I had to, because the director and the writer place so much importance on the rabbits from a thematic perspective, and even the way he shot it. That when I watched this, I was like, oh shit. Like, yeah, I don't have to give it to Peter Rabbit. I can actually give it to something that's a little more thematic and important. So, so that is the Castle Award, the 17 rabbits from The Favorite.
Wow. Now, how many statues are we going to have to make? We should have mentioned, by the way, everyone who wins gets a statue. Just keep an eye out. We promise we put them in the mail.
Let's just send 17 bags of Timothy hay.
There you go.
Because rabbits have to eat hay.
Exactly.
Not carrots.
And Timothy, we don't cheap out.
Yeah, we get Timothy hay, or orchard grass, or oat hay.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. I would have put money on you, because this is an award I knew it. Like, I mean, I knew we were going to do this one. He doesn't know the one that I'm about to do, but I knew that this one was coming from him. I would have put money on Peter Rabbit.
P. Rab.
Which,
because he's a rascal rebel rabbit.
Yeah, there you go. I would have put money on that, which would have been fun because we'd have the argument. But I get the feeling it might happen later, so we're okay.
There's no argument.
But no, I definitely would have put money on PD Rab winning that award. So I'm glad because you subverted my expectations, and that's great. All right, so this is Mystery Award.
Mystery.
What a mysterious Jogo. This is the Mystery Award. He doesn't know what the award is, much less which direction I'm going to go with it. The award that I'm giving this year is Justin's I Don't Get It Award. And Justin's I Don't Get It Award is given to a single movie that I just don't get the praise. I don't get the hype.
Oh, this should be fun.
I
know the answer to this one.
You can call this Justin's Old Man Award because it does very much feel like Old Man Yells at Cloud. Like I don't get it. I don't understand. It just I just don't get it. So the winner of the 2018 Justin's I Don't Get It Award is Hereditary.
Nailed it.
Yeah. As soon as I said it, you were just like, oh, I think I know. I don't get it. I get that, like, the movie tonally feels the way I think the movie should feel for what it's going for. And I don't necessarily want to criticize something for trying to be different, because I feel like this movie was actively trying to be different, and that's a good thing. To me, the movie gets to a point where it absolutely shits its pants. And a lot of that has to do with performance notes, and at one point it just gets too over the top for me, and I found myself laughing at this movie way too much to come anywhere in the ballpark of being unsettled by it. The first half of the movie, I was like, okay, I guess I kind of get it. By the end of it, I was just like, I don't get it. And it's not that I don't understand what happened, it's just, I don't get the praise. I get the feeling Tyler really liked this movie because I saw you shake your head. So if you can help me to get it, great. But for 2018, my Justin's I Don't Get It Award goes to Hereditary.
You're just wrong. No, I don't know. It was masterful in like pretty much every way. I don't want to go too much into detail right now because we're gonna have to talk about this later. So I'll just leave it.
Cool.
I'll leave you hanging.
All right. Well, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere because it's coming later.
Because I'm going to attempt to debunk Justin.
Okay. All right. And our final two awards of the video are ones that we are going to each give our own answer for rather than only one of us giving an answer for an award. And we're going to kick off with the story or premise that deserved a better movie. So clearly this is a movie that we didn't necessarily like, but the backstory to it or the premise of the movie or whatever deserved better than what we got on screen. My choice for this award for 2018 is The 1517 to Paris. Now this is a story about a 2015 train attack. I believe it was Thalys train lines. It was a train going from Amsterdam to Paris, where a terrorist attack was thwarted by 3 American soldiers who were there on leave. And it was directed by Clint Eastwood, and it had a creative aim that, like, I'm not going to criticize the creative aim of the movie, because it was very clearly trying to do something creatively that is like, that's ambitious. And that was having the actual soldiers play themselves. But that story deserves a much better short film. Because in order to lengthen that thing out to a feature-length film, they had to throw in a bunch of stuff that was not interesting to anybody. Right? And the way that they told that story in time hopping, and you go from the train to back to forward to back to the train to back, that can work. That can work in certain movies. It sure as hell did not work here. It was so detrimental to the actual core of the story, which is what happens on the train. Like, I don't need that much background information about these characters because the characters aren't that particularly interesting. They were just in a position to do a thing, and they did the thing. And that's the story. And it's like, that's a short film.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Make it a short film and be fine and probably get nominated for the Oscar for short film. Like, great, do that. But he didn't do that. He made a feature-length film about it, and it was a failure as a feature-length film. So that, to me, that story deserved a much better movie that was a much shorter movie, and that's why it gets my award for this year.
So I haven't seen it, but the one thing I'll say is that you have untrained actors, and Clint Eastwood is, or at least I've heard, is notoriously hands-off on his directing, like, of actors. I don't know if that's true or not, it's just something I read, so that's really problematic.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work that often, and that's really a fault of him as a director, even though I think he's a good director, but I guess that just was a stinker, just all around, which is a shame. I can see why you pick it.
it would be unfortunate to take non-actors and be very hands-off with the non-actors in acting.
It's like, I know they were there, but at the same time, this is acting,
right.
not, being there.
Right. And again, ambitious creatively.
Yeah.
Won't discredit it for that, but, there's something to be said for execution and finished product as well, and not so much.
Okay, so my pick is Hotel Artemis, which is not even a movie I dislike. I just think the premise of like a hospital for criminals was really cool, and just the setup and the trailer and the way that I thought it looked and stuff, I thought it looked really neat. And it was just so underwhelming, just in general. It was ultimately somewhat enjoyable, but I came out of that being like, wow, I should have really loved this movie, because the premise is so cool. The only other movie I really considered for this was Assassination Nation, but then I realized that the premise of that could really have gone either way, because it was really silly. But then I was like, but if they lean into it, a hospital for criminals is a cool idea.
Yeah, it would be like if you made a whole movie about like Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, there's just
like within Arkham Asylum.
There's like a tension and stuff that could be brought forward with that just wasn't. It was just didn't really do a whole lot of anything, really.
There you go. Hotel Artemis was one that I didn't see, but that's a perfectly valid explanation.
Thank you.
And the final award was Tyler's choice for an award that we both give, and his choice was Genre of the Year. So this takes basically all the movies we've seen this year, cut them up into genres, well, don't cut them up, but divide them into genres, and say, what genre was the genre of the year? And we're going to let Tyler, since it's his award, it's his baby, we're going to let you give yours first.
Okay, so this was originally going to be my surprise award, but then when we settled on just doing Castle, I was going to call it Congrats Horror, You Won Me Or.
Wow.
The rhyme skills.
Oh, man.
But it's horror. Horror was the best genre of the year. And it's kind of personal to me, though, because I don't love horror. I made an attempt to become more of a fan of horror. It was always one of the genres that, there's movies I look forward to that are in that genre, and some movies I really love in the past are horror movies.
This is such an interesting choice.
And whatnot. But it was always one of those genres that had to work harder for me. Like an action movie, you throw on an average, like Mark Wahlberg, Mile 22.
I was going to say, you're definitely talking about Mile 22.
I don't love that movie, but it's okay to me, because it's just an action movie, and that's fine. It has to work less hard to impress me. Horror never really had that benefit. There were horror movies like last year, like was It, that I really loved. Movies like Alien in the past that I really love. Because when I think about it, there are a few horror movies that are amongst my favorite of the year. It's kind of the year that I've turned and said that I will consider myself a horror fan from now on. It's still not my favorite genre, but I will consider myself a fan now. So I just think it was a solid year. Maybe this is because I actually searched for horror movies, like lesser knowns and stuff. Maybe for that reason. Maybe there's good horror movies every year that I just don't search for. But I got like a small list of some movies, and I'm not even saying I necessarily love all these, or that I've even seen all these, but I'm going by the reception, whether it's good or great or amazing. And I stretched the idea of horror a little bit. Like there's horror comedy, there's movies that only have horror elements, but they're all considered horror on certain websites. That's what I was going by. So there's just a short list. I'm not saying like all these are my favorite, or by any means, or that they make my top 30. A Quiet Place, Hereditary, The Cloverfield Killer, Possum, Cam, The Witch in the Window, May the Devil Take You, Bird Box, took over recently. Everyone's talking about Bird Box. Halloween, Mandy, Suspiria, The Purge, if you consider that horror, which I kind of don't anymore. Right. Annihilation, Marrowbone, Mom and Dad, Satan's Slave. Some of these are cheater picks, by the way, from last year, but
they count under our...
Apostle, The Endless, and then there's a real cheater from 2016 called Are We Not Cats, which does have horror themes. Again, some people think that's not really horror, but they were considered horror on certain websites that I frequent, so I went with it. So that's like a solid list of like okay or good to great to amazing horror movies this year. Like the fact that I could make like a top 10 horror movies this year, and I wouldn't go into like the 40s out of a...
Right.
It's like really impressive to me.
That's a really, obviously for you, that's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, it's very personal to me.
Yeah.
Like maybe people don't agree. Maybe they think it was a crappy year for horror. But for me personally, it was the year that I turned the corner.
That's fantastic. No, it's great. I'm glad you kind of introed the idea of, well, I kind of stretched the concept of the horror genre a little bit in some of the examples that you used. Because I kind of stretched the idea of genre when I chose my genre.
Okay.
So this is a little bit different. I'm basically going to call this, for me, subgenre of the year. Because you couldn't exactly call this a primary genre.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny, it's kind of ironic, because I mentioned it a little bit earlier in this video. My sub-genre of the year is the coming-of-age movie. So the reason that I used this as my choice is, I was looking through, I looked through my list, whatever, and not all of these movies that I'm going to mention, same as you, not all these movies that I'm going to mention are actually on my list. Or that I've even seen, but again, I know based on, like you said, based on reception and based on everything like that, how strong a movie it was for the movies that are very obviously coming-of-age movies, and the movies that only have elements of it, and sometimes you even kind of have to really stretch to find or to identify the element of coming-of-age that are involved in some of these movies. I have to actually grab my paperwork because I have them written down. Again, the obvious coming-of-age movies, I mentioned it earlier in the video, Blockers. Something like Beautiful Boy, where he's, growing up, but he's also dealing with addiction. Love, Simon, mid-90s. But again, you're talking about less obvious entries. Like, there's coming-of-age elements in Black Panther. Like, the character of T'Challa is coming to terms with what he is becoming and what he has to become for his people, and coming of age, coming into the role that he's destined for. There's elements of that. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, very obviously, the coming of age of Miles Morales. Wildlife, Ready Player One, there's coming of age elements in that movie. Pacific Rim Uprising has, coming of age elements in it.
The finest example.
The finest example of coming of age. So that's why I chose the coming of age movie, because whether it's an obvious example or it's a less obvious example, that made for a really strong list of movies in 2018 that had a core element or a secondary element of a character or a group of characters coming of age. So that's why I chose it.
I never really considered so many coming of age movies. Like when you said it, I was like, there's 3.
Yeah, it's like, I only remember.
I mean, I guess technically there aren't many, but if you do stretch it the way I can totally see what you're saying.
Right.
And a lot of those movies are quite good.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting pick. I didn't know where you were gonna go with that.
I went there.
You went there.
There you have it, folks. That caps off the miscellaneous section of the 2018 Library Chess Productions Movie Awards. That's going to cap off this video. Come back for the next video where we're going to get into some of what we call the People Awards. The next one coming up are top 3 best actors of 2018.